one of the guys in the group remembered that there was an article that a railroad model craftsman did in oh gosh, 1985, I think it was, and it might say at the bottom there, but my screen sharing is in the way. Yeah, there it is. So this really got to me. I said, whoa, this is really incredible. So I've got this 10-page article, guys, and I called them and they sent it to me, and they charged me $7. They said, "Oh, you just pay it when you feel like it." So back when I was just show director, I had gone over to their booth and I said, "I owe you guys $7 for an article." It was like 10 years later, and they had said, "You could pass on that. Don't worry about it." But my point is, if any of you want the 10-page article, I've got it scanned in, obviously, right here. So just email me, and I'll pop it right back at you. Okay. So what intrigued me about this was, in looking at this picture, I mean, this entire facility is all Coors, and this place does not shut down. It's open 24/7, 365, no holidays. So what happens in this little brewery right here is what we decided we would try to model. So as we look at the next slide, it's a close-up of that area. It got a little fuzzy because I blew it up too big, but there's the north area and the south area, and it's all indoors. So when we tried to model this, I said, geez, how the heck are we gonna, I can't model it indoors. You won't be able to see it. So we've got to do something to make it kind of indoors and kind of still visible for everybody. So I took some engineering liberties that you would die when you see. So we've got these in real life. I think there's 11 stations on the north, or and I forget which is which, and there's 10 on the other. So there's 21 stations to load beer. And you ask yourself, think about this. There's 21 stations on a siding. How do you get the third car out of there without touching the other cars? Because they're in the middle of being loaded. The third car got loaded faster. How do you get the third car out of there? And for that matter, any of the 21 stations. And the answer is really easy. You use transfer tables. So on each transfer table, there's 2 tracks. And when they're all pushed in against the loading dock, you could have a car on that track, and the other one becomes the through track to reach the other cars. And I'll show you what that looks like. So here's in one of the articles, here are the cars up against the loading dock. Here's the other track on the transfer table. They use 2 SW8s, and they're Coors. They're labeled for Coors. I don't know the colors. This is in I imagine it's their Coors colors, but these are all in black and white, so I really don't know.
I remember them being red with white lettering.
Okay. That's probably accurate, because that's not the first time I've heard that. So if you look in this first picture really closely, there's where my mouse is. That's the guy working the transfer table. This car is full. So the engine approaches. All right, they pull the transfer table out so that the second track, if you look, if you look down here at the bottom, let me just move this out of the way a little bit. So now it's in line with the other track, so the engine can come and pull that out of there. And then what they have to do is wait, and he puts an empty car there, and then they slide the transfer table back in. So very cool stuff. And I thought, how the heck are we going to model that? So at the end of an op session, I talked to John Bach. I said, John, there's no way this could be done. And if you remember, John Bach was a machinist by trade, and he had a small machine shop in his house, in his garage. And honestly, there's nothing he couldn't do. He did that rotary dumper that actually worked on one of his Beltline modules, and the coal loader that actually worked, and that's still around. I think his son still has those. So anyways, this is what it looks like, and you can read the entire detail. But what was happening is, when a car was loaded, it would buzz, a buzzer would go off, and then a light in this area would blink a certain color. And it does tell you in the article, the green lights, blah, 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 blah. The way we set up ours is when a car was full, a green light would blink when a buzzer would go off, and let you know. And when it was being loaded, it would be red. You know, in other words, it's not ready. Stop, it's not ready yet. So that being said, we had to devise something. So I've already started. I don't have an early picture of no building on it yet. So I started using Champion Walthers, Cornerstone Champion meatpacking. I used 3+, and I ran out of sides. So I actually had to find another one towards the end, and I'll show you. So picture it without any of this plastic on here. And so what John Bach delivered to me was an area over here for kind of like the offices and stuff, but it needed to house the speaker for the buzzer, because while the transfer tables are in motion, the buzzer is going off, is beeping. And what we used, and it was incredibly ingenious. These are just drawer slides. And what he did was he very carefully took Atlas approach girders, from the Atlas bridges, and very precisely and at a 90-degree angle loaded them. So when this comes out, it's in line with this track that we use to unload to the offices. So there's some things and machinery that we could unload here too, and not just beer all the time. So the approach track comes in on this outer track right here. When this slides out, it's in line with this track, so you could grab a car without touching the other cars. So it does exactly what the Coors Brewery did. But I needed this to be seen. So what you see along here, guys, are is the loading dock, and you'll see the details put in afterwards. But if you look at all of these pipes, and that's what they look like. They actually, and John manufactured a special tool that slides all the way in and touches a little screw that's inside each side, because each of these is the adjustment for the reed switches that are inside for the motor to stop it precisely so the track will align. And this was installed in 2006. We have yet to adjust these. They still are in perfect alignment. No, there's no derailments on this unless you try to push a car while a transfer table is in motion. So I got this base. He already put the 2 tracks on for loading on the back dock, and I had to figure out something above ground here. So with the Champion meatpacking products, I love them because of the brick detail, and you'll see as we go. So a couple of little close-ups, but I had to use 4 across the front. Believe it or not, the side of the meatpacking plant was exactly the right size that I needed for the side. It was like a freaking miracle. I thought, how am I going to splice a little piece on the end? But it turned out, and we didn't suspect that was going to be the case, but it worked out really well. So this becomes the loading dock down here for this smaller area. But the sides of this work perfectly. But if I head back, if you look, you could see the seam, because I hadn't painted this yet. It's actually there's 1 section, 2, 3, 4 sections. And some of them have 4 windows, and this one had 3, this one had 3, so it was concentric. So those were very carefully cut. And the way I did those, and you can see the seam a little bit more so right now. And I started down through the back, but I ran out of tall pieces. So what am I going to do between here and here is the question. So, and that comes later, so you'll see. So that's just a little bit more of a close-up where you can see the housing for all of this stuff. So what I did, and I still use it to this day, whenever I'm kit bashing or any of that, this is an old Shopsmith, guys. This is a Mark V Shopsmith. It's got all these attachments. It's a lathe. It's a disc sander. It's a table saw. I've got my belt, what is this? What is this called? Bandsaw, geez. So I've got my bandsaw hooked up to this. But what I did was I built on the fence that it comes with, I built an extension fence, and I've got the smallest blade with the finest number of teeth. And I could cut through plastic, and it comes out so precise, it's really impressive. So that when you 10X or plaster glue the stuff together. It's amazing. And I have a set of clamps to keep it all square and everything when I'm gluing it and everything. But I've had great luck because, you know, you build the right tools to do the right thing, and a lot of great things happen. So you could see what's happening. So you could see the seams. And then there's a seam right there. This one, it's a little off, but honestly, now that it's painted and I scrape away the little burrs, you can't find it. And then the other thing you do is an old Mike Tylick trick. You put a drain pipe there, but I couldn't because you don't have drain pipes down on top of the working. So I had to spend some time making sure those are nice. No windows yet. This is not square as it's kind of an optical illusion, but it's not square yet. You see, it's not sitting there square. I've got bracing later on that you'll see, but this shows the mechanism for each of the slides. It was a simple 12-volt motor, and he just set up reed switches so it would stop, and it was just a threaded rod. And so what would happen is that when that motor spun with the gear against the threaded rod, it would just pull those transfer tables out and then back in again. Now there's some electronics that go behind the scenes here, and I'll show you that in a sec. But you could actually see the levers where the reed switches would touch to go on and touch to go off. And it was those little, what looked like pipes where you could reach with a real thin screwdriver to adjust those. These are actually stick-on drainage grates. And they were just stuck on for the effect, and they look great. And when you weather them all up, you can't even tell that they were just stuck on. So we've got that. And then a little bit more of a close-up of the other side. That Energizer battery was changed once 2 years ago. So for the first time, it ran for about 12 years. And all that does is power the beeper. There's a 12-volt constant power source that keeps the firmware going and does all the LEDs and the lights that are on the building, which were added later. So as we progress through this, you'll see a little bit more of an angle so you can see where the joints are. And I started putting some bracing in, and that's just plastruck parts, you know, cut precisely to the same size as the other end so the buildings remain square. And you start to see a little bit more of it. I still hadn't done anything across the back, and I didn't want to have a boxy building. So I had enough of the upper level parts to do a little indent by one and then across this way. And so what that did, and now I started to put some bracing in to square this up as well. And what happened, and you can see I had to use a fourth building. You see how some of this is already painted? That's because I ran out of parts, and I really wanted to do this. And so right along here, it's actually the first floor roof. And then if you look back, now I'll show you there a little bit further on. I have a lot of extra stuff that came with the Champion. Don't forget, I had 3 of them now, and then a 4th. So I had a lot of the extra towers, water towers, and pieces that I put along in that indented area. Okay, and then the cooling towers I put on top of this area, all flat roof, as you'll see in a sec here. So there's some of the things that came with the kit. This was from an old Pola cement factory, these 3 pieces. And the base of it, you'll see I plunked right over in this area and used as the kind of like the control tower where you could see all of the transfer tables. So it'll allow us to see that. So that's just a different view at the same thing. But you could see how these were already painted a little bit. But I had a spray. It's still to this day is totally removable. So you could remove the whole thing, but now there's wires and some plugs to remove the wires. But I had to remove this so I could paint the whole thing after I was done with the building. So then I put in the inside, all right, because I had a lot of the low level. What was fun about it is, you know, when you look at these things when you look at the opposite side of these, if you don't treat them right, you could tell it's the inside of a plastic building. It's not finished. So I had 2 extra pieces, and I glued them face to face. So the outside was on this side as well as the other outside. So it was the right thickness. So it looked like a true brick wall on both sides. So I really lucked out. There's the outside, and I had a couple of these extra pieces that I glued on. And again, it came right to the edge of the foundation. I just couldn't believe it because I thought I was going to have to cut these down. Not that it would have been a problem, but it would have affected these windows up here as well. So I've got loading dock doors and a couple of office doors as well. And now I'm bracing like crazy for the rest of this. This is starting to show all the just to keep everything straight, guys. And I'll tell you, all I did, this whole thing was put together with Tenax. And honestly, where I really needed to reinforce it, I reinforced it with super glue. Okay. And I wasn't too, well, I'm very worried about getting it on the outside, but I wasn't too worried about the inside because I was going to put a floor on here and a couple of shadow boxes in the corner. So I wasn't too worried about seeing upstairs on the inside. There's the back, and I finally put the back on. So now you see it's indented across here. I need to put a roof on the first floor and then a roof on the entire second floor. So it'll allow me to do that as well. So as I continue, that's just some more close-ups. Again, this is the one that was used. You see, it was already painted, and oh boy, was it fun to paint about 8,000 of these little suckers, all over the building. But you take your time, you do it until you're sick of it, and then you're in good shape. And there's a better look at the levers. Can't quite see any of the reed. There's one of the reed switches right there. So when this lever hit that reed switch, it cut the power. And then when you send it the other way, it would go until it hit the reed switch underneath at the other end. It was very, very cool the way he did that. So there's some more of the building that was used. You can see all the parts that were already. I actually, all I did was very carefully take apart a fourth Champion meatpacking and use those parts. And we've got loading docks across the back. It turns out the foundation was so close to the track, I had to take the stairs and basically cut them in half so they were hardly that thick. And you'll see that in a picture in a second. So now painted, all the windows are in. And I just painted it, I do the typical thing that we all do. I take all the windows and use the blue tape from painting and just hold that down, sticky side up, and then just put all the windows on them so they won't blow away when you use. Guys, there's no airbrush on this. This is all aerosol can. So I just aerosoled all the windows white, and I use what's called satin brick from I forget who, but it's readily available at Home Depot and Lowe's, and it looks the color of satin brick. But see, my style with brick, after I paint that, I actually take a toothbrush and use a real thin mix of drywall mud and scrub the entire thing. And the reason why I like that better than whitewash paint or anything else I've tried it all is you have to wipe it off because when it dries, it's really thick. It's too thick. It's too white. It looks like really old brick. So I wipe it down at first, and then I wipe it again with a real, not wet cloth, but barely damp, and it does remove it. But what I like about it, it leaves a satin finish, almost a gritty finish. And you look at it and you swear to God, it's brick. So it really does a nice job. These are some of those cooling towers. There's actually a third. I'll show you what I did with it afterwards. So you start to see some of the finishing details. And there's a good shot of most of the work done. And then it was time to start in on the details. There's the back side of it. And if you look, these doors right here, there was barely enough room to get a stairway down there on this level, on these upper levels. So I actually took a stair, and on my bandsaw, I cut it so it was about a 1/2 inch thick, right down the middle, so that with the stairwell still intact. So I mean, the railing still intact, so it would keep the railing. You'll see it in another picture. Still no roof yet, but you see all the braces are in place, and I've got the roof here, just giant hunks of styrene. And you could buy black styrene now. So I usually buy black styrene, but my big thing, guys, for steel and rust, flat black out of the aerosol can, and then I rust it up with orangey colored chalk, brownish orangey color chalks to get the right effect for rust and stuff. A lot of stuff I do is flat black and rust from chalk. So we've got that. And then it was time for details. So we started putting in some details. I hadn't put the light in yet. There's a light over this door, and there's a lot of lights all through this whole place. So it allows us to see some details. And then starting details, I have a ton more details. I actually found a bunch of barrels, old wooden barrels, and I painted them all silver. Boy, do they look like kegs. So there's kegs all through the place on the loading dock. Not so much on the inside, but on the loading dock. But there's a couple of executives and some workers and some stuff. And there's that stair. Look at how that stair is usually about twice as wide, 3 times as wide. But I just took a bandsaw and went right down there, and because it was going to hit the cars. So that's what we did with that. So I wanted to show you that. And then you could see the roof is in. We're starting to put some of those water towers in back there. And there's a couple water towers. And that's from that Pola kit along with those 2 things. So I just had a mix of all different weird stuff and a thing to get up on the roof and a bunch of these little vents all over the place. And I've got 10 million of these. So I just stick them in wherever it looks appropriate. And I was saving this area for the sign, so I didn't want to put anything on the roof yet. But you'll see in the latest picture that we have, we actually filled one of those little mini liquor bottles with colored water, and we have an LED at the bottom of it. And I was hoping we could make it bubble, but no. But it at least there's a light with a bottle, a giant beer bottle. It looks is what it looks. There it is, right there. So there's a little LED, that bright white LED that shines up through it, guys, and it kind of looks like. And there's the sign, and now we've got some details. And here is actually the control tower with a couple of people looking on. And you can't really see it here, but in this one you get a better shot. These are just lights lighting up each of the loading docks. But here, a little bit further out front, and these, believe it or not, are parallel. It's hard to see. It's a bicolor LED. So when they're red, they're in the progress of being loaded. And now you actually can see some of the 2 John's cars. And there's probably a fleet of about 20 of these cars, enough to have a full ride leaving and a load of a string of empties coming up. So we've got a lot of these cars. So we had decals made based on these signs and all that kind of stuff. But if you look, this is the engineering marvel, guys. So I actually had to build almost like a bridge because I couldn't justify not having this, and then this building just overhanging one day would just fall in, right? So even this is an engineering insanity, but it allowed me to pull this off. And so what happens is when this control panel down here in the lower right-hand corner of the slide, well, that can be set, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. All of a sudden, that'll beep, and this will start blinking green. And so what that means is you flip the switch, you slide the transfer table out. The SW, it's not an 8. I don't know what, I think it's a 5 that Dick uses. The SW5 comes and pulls the car, which is now the track that it's on is now in line with these other 2. You don't have to disturb these 2. And you set these at random. So if you're the brewery guy, you've got to react immediately because this is all fresh brewed, and they've got to ship it out. So people have dropped their snack and gone over to unload cars and stuff, and it's actually fun. So if you're the brewery guy on Dick Joyce's layout, it's a ton of fun. This I had extra from that extra kit. So I said, well, let's put it there because it was, I made from the other 2, 3, this area right here with the load. You see that loading dock is now on the front, but on this one. But I said, well, let's get some piping across. So this is just plastic that I bent and glued it onto this one and had it come over here. So it looks like it's part of it to dress it up. And you'll see that. So this is just another one of it, pretty much finished. It's a little blurry. I don't like that picture, but it does show a little bit of how this looks. Now this is the control system, guys. There's a firmware chip. If you recall in that picture of where the speaker was, there's a little piece of circuit board there. And it at random controls each of the 3 docks. You can adjust the time. These are all set down pretty much to about 3 or 4 minutes, but you could adjust that dial by turning them up, and they go all the way up to 45 minutes. When I operate this, I put them straight in the middle. You put them in the middle first, then you turn it on and it reads where this is. So the random time generator could be anywhere from 1 minute to 12, maybe 20 minutes. But if you turn it all the way up, it could be anywhere from 1 minute to 45 minutes. I don't like waiting that long. I like playing. So it starts to blink as it's blinking up in the building. It starts to blink here too. And so you just flip that down and the transfer table comes out. You do your switching, you flip it back, and it resets the timer again. This is just so you could do some overriding. You could actually hold that button down, and based on the number of blinks, green or red, green being 10 minutes, if it blinks twice green and 3 red, that's 23 minutes before this dock is going to be unloaded. And that's real time, not any fast time. So you've got this going as well. And it hinges out so you can deal with the electronics and stuff like that. So the last slide is, here's Dick Joyce in front of his Two Johns Brewery. This actually, we've got footage and an article ready to go because Craftman wanted to do a follow-up for this. We've just never gotten around to it. We were real close during the last year and a half, and the article's pretty much written. But the pandemic hit, and of course the whole world came to a stop. And this was a beginning. You could see the blue dot. That was the beginning of a video that they had come and filmed. But to see this live, guys, Dick is going to start op sessions again in August. We've already been talking about it, and I think he's going to put a line on it. You got to be vaccinated to show up. We've already started doing work sessions on Friday nights, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, for people that are vaccinated only. And we trust you. If you say you're vaccinated, you're vaccinated. But anyways, that's Dick. This is the Two Johns Brewery, and it was a fun project for me to put the building together. After I received that from John, took about a month to build it. I built the building in about 3 weeks. But I had all the parts. I was accumulating the parts because I loved this look of the building. I was just really lucky that it fit on the foundation as well as it did. Otherwise, I would have had to cut this down a little bit and who knows what, and that kind of thing. So there you have it. I appreciate you guys watching, and I am going to stop sharing. And if you have questions, you could email me, of course, and as well as me sending the article. I'd be very happy to do that. So email me anytime. And if you have questions now, lay it on me. It doesn't have to be about this. It could be about the show. It could be about anything. And I am stopping the share. There you go. Thank you, guys.